This video is brought to you by our patrons. If you want to make sure we can create more content like this, consider supporting us on our Patreon. Thank you. Okay, hello and welcome to Chapter 11 of Capitalism, Socialism and Democracy by Joseph A. Schumpeter. This chapter is called The Civilization of Capitalism, and the general thesis of this chapter can basically be contained in this quote. All the features and achievements of modern civilization are, directly or indirectly, the products of the capitalist process. They must be included in any balance sheet of it and in any verdict about its deeds or misdeeds. And our ideas about the whole schmear will often look differently if viewed in the light of a comparison with the corresponding facts of pre-capitalist experience. And it cannot be replied that those were different times, for it is precisely the capitalist process that made the difference. So, leaving behind purely economic considerations, we now take on capitalism's cultural complement, or its socio-psychological superstructure, to use Marxian terms. And this is essentially the mentality and character of capitalist society, or more specifically, the bourgeois class. So, Schumpeter starts out by describing that primitive man was brought into rational thought by economic considerations. Capitalism helped focus man's self-interest, although importantly, it did not invent it. Pre-capitalist man is in fact no less grabbing than the capitalist man. Peasant serfs, for instance, or warrior lords assert their self-interest with brutal energy all their own. But capitalism develops rationality and adds a new edge to it in two interconnected ways. And here are those two interconnected ways. Number one, capitalism introduces money as a unit by which we can make more exact cost-benefit analyses. And number two, capitalism not only produced the mental attitude of modern science, the attitude that consists in asking certain questions and in going about answering them in a certain way, but also the men and means. Capitalism broke up feudal society and made way for an intellectual class, or group. Now, for accuracy, we should acknowledge that there was some mobility in feudal society, primarily in the upper echelons, but capitalism really brought that mobility to a whole new level. And this new class that came into view, the intellectual class, created the innovation that is necessary for capitalism. And next, let us also address democracy, specifically individualistic democracy. In description, radicals may insist that the masses are crying for salvation from intolerable sufferings and rattling their chains in darkness and despair. But of course, there never was so much personal freedom of mind and body for all, never so much readiness to bear with and even to finance the mortal enemies of the leading class. Never so much active sympathy with real and faked sufferings. Never so much readiness to accept burdens as there is in modern capitalist society. And whatever democracy there was outside of peasant communities developed historically in the wake of both modern and ancient capitalism. So 2 points here on democracy. Schumpeter has pointed out that institutional change to improve life for the masses was not merely forced onto capitalist society by need to alleviate the ever-worsening suffering of the public, but the improvement of the standard of living that occurred through the capitalist process provided the means and the will to make that institutional change happen. And point number 2 is that capitalist civilization is inherently rational and anti-heroic. That is, it runs in opposition to a medieval knight's view of things, in which you might expect fighting for the sake of fighting, or victory for the sake of victory. In contrast, industrial and commercial bourgeois is fundamentally pacifist and inclined to insist on the applications of the moral precepts of private life to international relations. While there are some prior movements toward international peace via the Roman Catholic Church, for example, but modern pacifism and modern international morality are nonetheless products of capitalism. Now, the natural response right now is, what about Marx's theory of imperialism? Well, Schumpeter rejects it. He says, of course, there are a handful of examples where this theory might appear to be true, but on the whole, we can observe that capitalist society is incentivized toward pacifism. Okay, now after all of this, you may still find that you hate capitalism and the culture of capitalism, and Schumpeter says that is perfectly fine. A value judgment is not really the purpose of Schumpeter's analysis anyway. He does not find that the point of interest. For mankind is not free to choose. Things economic and social move by their own momentum, and the ensuing situations compel individuals and groups to behave in certain ways, whatever they may wish to do. Not indeed by destroying their freedom of choice, but by shaping the choosing mentalities and by narrowing the list of possibilities from which to choose. In consequence, capitalist performance is not even relevant for prognosis. Hence, I am not going to argue on the strength of that performance that the capitalist intermezzo is likely to be prolonged. In fact, I am now going to draw the exactly opposite inference. Bum bum bum. What is going to happen? Why is chapter 12 called Crumbling Walls? I guess we'll find out in our next video. If you enjoyed this video, please hit a like and subscribe. Maybe consider joining our Patreon. We would appreciate it so much, and I hope everyone is having a swell fall season. It is the best time of the year. That's a universal opinion, and we'll see you next time with Chapter 12.